Last year, I came across a story that offered a different perspective than most. It was sent to me by a former park ranger who worked in Superior National Forest during the late 1980s. He never provided his real name, only identifying himself as Lunacy 24, and he titled his story simply, "Never Speak It." According to Lunacy 24, the veteran rangers had an unspoken rule, a specific word and subject they refused to utter aloud. And when he finally understood the reason behind it, he wished he had never asked. I can't verify whether this story is true or not, but after reading it, I understand why he felt compelled to share it with me. It serves as a warning, one we should all take to heart. Why park rangers won't talk about the Wendigo. I'm writing this because my brother's daughter wants to become a park ranger. She's 20 now, studying environmental science at the University of Minnesota. Last month, she asked me about my time with the Forest Service. I gave her the same response I've given everyone for the past 36 years. I worked one season in Superior National Forest and decided it wasn't for me. That was a lie. The truth is, I'm the reason my brother Michael wears a prosthetic left arm. I'm the reason 3 people transferred out of our station within 2 months. And I'm the reason the northeastern sections of Superior National Forest had wildlife management closures for an entire year in 1987. I need to be clear about something before I continue. I've been sober for 12 years. I was not intoxicated during any of the events I'm about to describe. I wasn't under the influence of drugs, and I wasn't experiencing any kind of psychotic break. The medical evaluation I underwent after the incident confirmed I was of sound mind. I'm telling you this because I know how it might sound. I know what I'm about to describe seems impossible, but it happened. My name is Ethan. Everyone calls me Rhett. In the summer of 1987, I was 23 years old, fresh out of the University of Wisconsin with a forestry degree and a head full of romanticized ideas about wilderness work. My older brother, Michael, had been a ranger in Superior National Forest for 8 years by then, and he helped me secure a position at his station. I thought I was beginning a career. I lasted 4 months. This is what happened and why. Superior National Forest covers over 3 million acres in northeastern Minnesota, bordering Canada. Most people know it for the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness, over 1 million acres of pristine lakes and forest, accessible only by canoe or on foot. In '87, it was even more remote than it is now. Cell phones didn't exist, radio communication was spotty. Some areas hadn't seen human traffic in years. I reported to the ranger station near Ely, Minnesota that summer. The station was a small facility with a main building containing offices, a bunkhouse for rangers working consecutive shifts, and a maintenance shed. Our crew consisted of 7 people, including myself. Michael was my immediate supervisor. He'd always been the responsible one, serious and thorough, the kind of man who'd read every manual cover to cover, even when I found it annoying. At 32, he'd already been promoted twice and was being groomed for a station chief position somewhere down the line. He took the work seriously, maybe too seriously, but people respected him for that. The station chief was Frank, a Finnish American in his mid-50s who'd spent his entire career in the forest. He had that weathered look people get from decades of outdoor experience, skin like leather and permanent squint lines. The guy's hands looked carved from wood, and he didn't waste words. Sarah was the only woman on our crew and the most experienced ranger besides Frank. She was in her late 40s and had been in the service for 15 years. She'd transferred from Montana after a divorce. She could outwork any of us and had no patience for complaints about harsh conditions. Jean-Luc was a 28-year-old guy, French-Canadian, and the most easygoing person I'd ever met. He'd been there 3 years and knew the boundary waters like his backyard. He had a joke for every situation and made the long canoe patrols bearable with his stories. Harold was our oldest ranger, pushing 65. He was planning to retire at the end of the season. He'd worked in Superior for over 30 years. He was a very quiet guy, like he was always listening for something, and that something was none of us. I noticed he watched people more than he talked to them. The last two were seasonal rangers who rotated in and out, and they're not particularly important to the story. For my first 2 weeks, the work was exactly what I'd dreamed. Backcountry patrols, maintaining campsites, checking in on hiking groups, and monitoring wildlife. The boundary waters in summer is beautiful, but if I had to describe it right now, it would sound like I was reading from a tourism brochure, so I just won't try. All in all, it was hard work, physical work, and I loved it. Let's get to the first odd part. Jean-Luc and I were responding to a report about some lost hikers who turned out to be just fine. They'd gotten confused about their pickup location. On our way back to the station, we came across a deer carcass about 50 yards off the main trail. Jean-Luc stopped to examine it, which was something we were supposed to do, document any unusual wildlife activity or signs of poaching. "Huh," Jean-Luc said, crouching down next to it. "That's not right." "What isn't?" I asked. He pointed at the carcass. "The way it's stripped. Coyotes usually work from the belly, but this..." He trailed off and stood up. "Well, this must have been wolves. They're not common this far south, but it can happen." "Doesn't really look like wolf feeding patterns to me," I said. I'd studied predator behavior in school. "You see these tears? They're too ragged." I pointed at them. Jean-Luc gave me a look, like he was doubting me. "Yeah, well, wildlife does what wildlife does." He started walking again, faster than before. I followed. Should we report it?" "Already made a note." He didn't elaborate. That evening, back at the station, I mentioned it during dinner. We all ate together in the main building's common room, one of those forced camaraderie things that actually worked pretty well most of the time. So Jean-Luc and I found this deer carcass out by Hegman Lake, stripped up in a weird way. Might want to keep an eye out for unusual predator activity. Harold, who was eating quietly, stopped with his fork halfway to his mouth. The pause was brief but noticeable. Michael gave me a look I couldn't quite read. "What kind of predator activity?" "I don't know, that's the thing. The feeding pattern didn't match anything I learned about in school." "Probably coyotes," Sarah said firmly. "They'll strip a carcass pretty thoroughly." "That's what I said," Jean-Luc added quickly. Frank cleared his throat. "We'll make a note in the log. Anything else to report?" The subject changed to an upcoming supply run, and that was that. But I noticed Harold didn't finish his dinner. Over the next few weeks, I started picking up on a pattern. There were certain topics that would cause conversations to shut down immediately. Any mention of the winter of 1979, missing persons cases before 1980, specific sections of the forest, particularly the northeastern quadrants, near the Echo Trail area. One evening in the middle of August, I was helping reorganize the storage room. It was one of those make-work tasks they give to the new guy. I found an old filing cabinet pushed against the back wall. The drawers were mostly empty, except for one labeled Incident Reports, 1975 to 1980. I pulled it open. There should have been hundreds of reports in a 5-year span, but I found maybe 30. The rest had been removed, and not neatly. I could see torn edges where pages had been ripped out of binders. One partial report caught my attention. It was from 1976, and most of the text had been redacted with black marker, but one line near the bottom was still legible. Visitor reported hearing crying man near Esther Lake. No source located. Recommend follow-up. Someone had written in pen at the bottom, no follow-up. Close file. I heard footsteps and shoved the file drawer closed. Sarah appeared in the doorway. Finding everything okay? Yeah, just about done. She glanced at the filing cabinet, then at me. That's old storage. We don't use those files anymore. Really? We should just throw it all out. Sure, I said. She lingered for a moment, then left. I didn't mention a word about what I'd found. The real confrontation came several days later. A group of campers came into the station mid-afternoon, clearly shaken up. They'd cut their trip short and wanted to report something. We heard someone in distress, the man said. His name was Derek, I think. Last night, around 3 in the morning, it sounded like a man crying, like really upset. We thought someone got hurt. Where were you camping? Frank asked. Little Trout Lake. We even yelled out asking if anyone needed help, but the crying just stopped for a minute, and then it started up again from a different direction. We couldn't figure out where it was coming from. It sounded wrong, his wife added. I'm not sure how to explain it exactly, but like someone was mimicking crying. I jumped in, trying to be helpful. Probably just a loon. They make sounds that can seem almost human, especially at night. Or maybe a lynx. I read that indigenous peoples around here used to have stories about... It was an animal, Michael said sharply, cutting me off. That's all. Sound travels pretty weird across water at night, and loons can make very unsettling calls. The campers seemed satisfied with that explanation and left. After they were gone, Michael pulled me aside by my upper arm, harder than necessary. Stop it. Stop what? Whatever you think you're going to say about what you've been reading or asking about, don't. I was just trying to help explain. I know exactly what you were about to say. His face was stone cold. Don't say that word here, ever. I felt my temper and confusion rising. I've been walking on eggshells for weeks, trying to figure out why everyone acted so strange about certain things, and now my own brother was treating me like a child. What word, Michael? Wendigo. Jesus Christ, man. I was just going to mention that the local legends might explain why sounds seem scary to people at night. You know, folklore usually has a basis in... He went pale. Actually pale. The blood had instantly drained from his face. Don't say that word here. He used a curse I'll leave out. I'd actually never heard him curse at me before. We came from a family where cursing at someone was a serious thing. I just stared at him. He seriously believed? And he walked away, just turned and walked back toward the main building, leaving me standing there. That night, I kept thinking about his reaction. Michael was the most rational man I knew. He did not believe in ghosts or UFOs or Bigfoot. He read Scientific American and Consumer Reports, for Pete's sake. The idea that he'd react that way to what I considered superstitious nonsense didn't make sense to me. But I'd seen something in his eyes. Fear. My older brother was afraid. I told myself it wasn't that. Maybe he was stressed. Station chief responsibilities were probably getting to him. I mean, he was the big boss in training. I had no idea what kind of anxiety he might have been going through. And maybe the isolation out here was harder than I thought. There had to be a good explanation for everything. Looking back now, I realized how arrogant I was. I was so certain that my education and rational mind gave me superior understanding. I was 23 and had spent 4 months in the woods. My brother had spent 8 years there. Some of the others much, much more than that. But I thought I knew better. That arrogance is why what happened next was my fault. I own that now. I've had plenty of time to own it. The incident that started everything happened over Labor Day weekend, 1987. The station was busy. It was the last big camping weekend before fall weather set in. Everyone was pulling extra shifts, and I was still somewhat in the doghouse with Michael. We'd been on different patrol rotations, which was fine with me. The tension between us could be exhausting. On Sunday, I was on duty at the station, handling radio calls and walk-ins, when a call came through around 4 in the afternoon. It was a fisherman, and he sounded middle-aged, trying to keep his voice steady and failing. "I need to report something at Disappointment Lake. I need someone to come out here," he said. "What's the nature of the emergency, sir?" A pause, and then, "I found someone. A body." It suddenly felt like I was underwater. "Oh, are you certain they're deceased?" There was another pause, and then, "I am certain. I've seen dead bodies before. This ain't, you need to send someone. We'll have a team out there within 2 hours. Can you provide your exact location?" He gave coordinates for a small island on Disappointment Lake's eastern shore. He said his name was Curtis and explained how he'd been fishing and seen something on the island that didn't look quite right. Frank assigned Michael and me. It was a 2-hour canoe trip from the nearest access point. Protocol was to send 2 rangers for any death investigation, and we were the most readily available. The paddle out was tense. Michael and I hadn't really spoken since our argument. We stuck to operational communication. "Should reach the access point by 5:30, he said. "Copy that," I told him. "This Curtis, the guy who called, did you get any other details from him?" Just that he found a body on the island. Wouldn't elaborate over the radio." Michael nodded. We paddled in silence after that. Curtis was waiting at the shore when we arrived, standing next to his canoe. He had a weathered face and hands that shook slightly when he pointed toward the island. "It's about 200 yards that way. Small island, mostly rock. I saw it from a distance and thought maybe it was a pile of clothes or something, but then I got closer." "You didn't disturb the scene?" Michael asked. "Hell no. Once I saw what that was, I came straight back and radioed you." "Good. Stay here. We'll take a look and report back." Curtis looked relieved not to be going back out there. Michael and I paddled to the island. It was small, maybe 40 yards across, mostly granite outcropping with some scraggly pines. We saw the body from 20 feet away. Male, early 30s based on what I could tell. He'd been dead for several days. Decomposition was well underway in the late summer heat. He was lying on his back, or what was left of his back, near the center of the island. I'd seen dead animals before. I'd seen one dead person before too, my grandfather in his casket. This was so much different.
The man's face was locked in an expression I can still see whenever I close my eyes. His torso and legs had sustained massive trauma. Chunks of flesh were missing, but the wounds weren't clean. They were torn and ragged, like something had ripped pieces away rather than biting or cutting them off. His hands were shredded, defensive wounds. The blood trail suggested he had been mobile during at least part of the attack, because there were drag marks and bloody handprints on the rock leading back toward the water, like he'd tried to crawl away. His clothing was in tatters, scattered over a 30-foot area. One boot was in the water, the other was still on his foot. Michael examined the scene more methodically. He was taking notes, not saying a word, but his face looked grim. I stood there trying to catalog what I was seeing in clinical terms, the way they taught us in training. Document, don't interpret. But my brain kept trying to interpret anyway. These wounds didn't match a coyote or wolf or bear attack. Bears bite and claw, they don't tear like this. For wolves, it was the wrong pattern, and for a coyote, it was too much damage. Michael, I said, what could do something like this? I don't know yet. His voice was flat. But you have an idea. He didn't answer. He was looking at something beyond the body. I followed his gaze. About 50 yards up on the other side of the island, there were 3 deer carcasses, all in various stages of decomposition, all showing the same ragged tearing pattern. Curtis had noticed those too.
Michael keyed his radio. Station, this is Ranger Mitchell. We've located the deceased individual, requesting full team response and medical examiner. This is a code yellow situation. There was static, then Frank's voice. Confirm, code yellow. Affirmative, multiple consistent indicators. A long pause. I could hear voices in the background at the station, but couldn't make out words. Eventually, Frank came back on. Understood. Team will deploy at first light. Maintain position until then. Do not pursue any leads tonight. Do you copy? Copy that. We'll secure the scene. Frank's voice changed then. Michael, be careful out there. We will, sir. I waited until he'd hung up the radio. What's code yellow? It's a designation for situations that require careful handling. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting. He started marking off the scene with tape we carried for this purpose. We need to secure this and camp here tonight. A team will come at dawn with the medical examiner. Wait a minute. Camp here? With a dead body? Yes, Rhett. Curtis paddled away before sunset. Can't blame him for not wanting to stay, and we didn't need him to. Apparently, regulations said we had to maintain the scene, which meant staying on the island overnight. We set up a basic camp at the far end of the island, away from the body, but where we could keep an eye on the scene. Michael built a small fire. We ate MREs in silence. I tried several times to start a conversation. I asked him what he thought happened, what code yellow meant again. I asked if he thought it was a bear attack. Stop talking, he finally said. Just stop. Michael, I'm just trying to understand what we're dealing with. What we're dealing with is a dead body that will be handled by the proper authorities in the morning. That's all you need to understand. Is this about, if you finish that sentence, I will write you up for insubordination? Whatever. I shut up after that. We took turns on watch, 2 hours each. I took the first shift. The sun set around 8:30 and the temperature dropped fast. It was early September and nights were already getting cold. The fire helped, but not as much as I'd hoped. Around 11, I woke Michael for his shift and tried to sleep. The sleeping bag was warm enough, but I couldn't relax. Discovering a dead body like that had me unsettled. Every sound seemed too loud. I listened to the water lapping against rock and the wind through the trees. I could hear an owl somewhere across the lake. At some point, though, I must have dozed off because I woke up suddenly to find Michael sitting rigid, staring out across the water toward the north shore. His rifle was across his lap. "What?" I started. He held up his hand, signaling me to listen. At first, I didn't hear anything, but then I did. Someone was crying. It was distant, maybe half a mile away, coming from the direction of the north shore. A man's voice, weeping, not screaming or calling for help, just crying, deep sobs that carried across the water. "What the hell is that?" I whispered. "Don't shine your light toward it. Do not call out, and don't move. Rhett, do you hear me? Don't move." I nodded. I had never heard Michael's voice sound like that, so tight, so controlled and scared. The crying continued for about 15 minutes. It would fade away, then swell again, and at one point it seemed to move, coming from a different location to the west. And then it stopped. Complete silence. Even the wind went quiet. Michael stayed exactly where he was, rifle ready for another hour. I don't think he even blinked. I watched his hands, the way they trembled. When false dawn finally started lighting the eastern sky around 5:30, Michael finally moved. He stood up, stretched, and started breaking down our camp without a word. I wanted to ask him about the crying. I wanted to demand he tell me what the hell was going on. But something about the look on his face stopped me. The rest of our team arrived just after 7. Sarah, Jean-Luc, and Harold, plus the county medical examiner and 2 sheriff's deputies. They took photos, bagged the body, and documented everything. I overheard part of a conversation between Frank and the medical examiner while they were loading the body into the canoe. "Same as 79?" the examiner asked quietly. We don't talk about 79, Frank said. The examiner nodded. "Animal attack, species undetermined. That's what I'll put in the report." "I appreciate that." Back at the station, there was an emergency team meeting. All rangers present. Frank laid out new protocols. No solo patrols in the northeastern quadrants until further notice. All rangers to carry rifles on patrol, not just sidearms. Visitor access to certain areas temporarily suspended for wildlife management purposes, and absolute radio silence on speculation about the death. The medical examiner has ruled it an animal attack. That's the official determination. If anyone asks, that's what we tell them. We don't speculate on the species. We don't share graphic details. We express sympathy for the deceased and his family, and we move on. Understood? Good. Dismissed. As people filed out, I heard Harold say quietly to Sarah, "Third time's the pattern." She shushed him immediately. That night, lying in my bunk, my brain kept circling back to the same questions. The wounds on the body and those deer carcasses, the crying we'd heard, Michael's fear, Code Yellow, the winter of 79, and apparently that one word everyone seemed terrified to say out loud. I told myself I was being rational. I told myself there had to be a logical explanation. Maybe a mentally ill person living in these woods. Maybe a rare predator species. Could be some combination of factors creating an unusual situation. But I also knew that I'd heard something out there on that island, and whatever it was, it had made my brother, who had done 2 tours in the forest, who'd faced down bears and evacuated injured hikers and dealt with armed poachers, shake with fear. I should have let it go. I should have trusted that silence. But I was 23, and again, I thought I knew better. That was my mistake. Over the next week, I became obsessed. That's the only word for it. I spent my off hours in the station's small library, really just a room with 3 bookcases full of forestry manuals, old National Geographic magazines, and donated paperbacks. But there were also personal notebooks left behind by previous rangers, logs that went back decades. Most were what you'd expect: weather reports, wildlife sightings, maintenance notes. But some had pages torn out, clean tears. Reminded me of that filing drawer, the way documents had very apparently been torn out. One notebook from 1976 had a notation that caught my attention. 3rd incident this month. HK suggests revival of old protocols. The entries after that date were sparse and vague, with no mention of what the incidents were or what the old protocols involved. HK. That had to be Harold. He'd been working here since the mid-70s. I found him one evening after dinner, sitting on the bench outside the maintenance shed, smoking a cigarette. Harold was one of those people who seemed to exist on the periphery of every gathering. Present, but separate. I'd noticed he ate quickly and left the common room before anyone else. He volunteered for solo patrols more than the rest of us. "Hey, can I ask you something?" I said. He took a drag and breathed out slowly. "You can ask." "What happened here in the winter of 1979? Harold looked at me for a long while. Then he stubbed out his cigarette and stood up. "Good night, Rhett. Look, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm trying to understand all this. A man died out there. We found him torn apart, and everyone's acting like we should just file paperwork and move on." Harold stopped, then turned back to me. "You want to understand? Then understand this. There are things in these woods older than Minnesota itself, older than America, older than any name we've put to them. The only reason they leave us alone is because we leave them alone." "You're talking about folklore?" "I'm talking about respecting silence." He studied my face. "Your brother ever tell you why he almost quit back in '79? No. That should tell you something." Harold started to walk again. "Some things aren't meant to be poked at, son. Some sleeping dogs should stay sleeping." He went into the bunkhouse and closed the door. The next incident happened 12 days after we found the body at Disappointment Lake. Mid-September, late afternoon. Jean-Luc and Sarah were responding to a camper report about 2 miles north of Hegman Lake. A group had found their food cache destroyed. They'd hung it up properly, 12 feet up between 2 trees like you're supposed to, but something had torn it down and shredded the bags. All the meat was gone. The dried goods were scattered but uneaten. That alone wasn't unusual. Bears can be persistent and clever. But when Jean-Luc and Sarah arrived, the campers reported that their dog was missing too. They found the dog a quarter-mile away. Sarah's voice came over the radio while I was manning the station. She sounded different, cautious. "Station, this is Sarah. We have another yellow situation. Requesting Frank respond." Frank's jaw tightened. "Copy. Maintain position. I'm en route with Mitchell." He meant Michael, not me. But Michael was 2 hours away on a patrol near Fall Lake. I was the only one available. "I can respond," I said. Frank hesitated, then nodded. "Get your gear." The hike out took about 90 minutes. We found Jean-Luc and Sarah with the campers, who looked shaken. Their dog was a golden retriever, apparently, though it was hard to tell. The carcass had been partially eaten, accompanied by those familiar ragged tears. The campers were a couple in their 40s who'd done this route a dozen times. They weren't the type to spook easily, but they were beyond spooked. "Now, we heard something last night, around 2 in the morning, crying, like someone was in pain. We thought maybe another camper had gotten injured, but we couldn't find anyone." "Yeah, it moved," her husband added. "We'd hear it from one direction, then a minute later it would come from somewhere else entirely." Frank and Sarah exchanged a look. "We'll escort you out," Frank said. "Jean-Luc, document the scene. Rhett, help him." While Jean-Luc took photos and measurements, I examined the carcass more closely. I'd grown up around hunting. I'd field-dressed deer, seen how predators fed. But this was all wrong compared to that. How could something look like it was bitten, but not have any teeth marks at all? "Don't overthink it," Jean-Luc said quietly. "How can you not overthink this?" He lowered his camera. "Because overthinking it doesn't help. It doesn't change anything. Just makes you start seeing things and hearing things that aren't there, or makes you see and hear things that are there." He looked uncomfortable. "Rhett, man, just take my advice. Let this go." We hiked back and didn't say another word. Over the next week, the pattern expanded. 3 more animal carcasses were found within a 10-mile radius of the original incident. A deer near Stewart Lake, a beaver at Moose River, an otter at Basswood Lake. All partially eaten, showing the same tearing pattern. The locations formed a rough arc, moving south and east toward more populated areas, toward the main access points. Hikers started reporting odd experiences, feeling watched, hearing sounds we had difficulty matching to any known wildlife. 2 separate groups mentioned hearing crying in the middle of the night. One couple claimed they'd seen someone crouching by a creek near their campsite around dawn. When they'd called out to ask if the person needed help, the figure had looked up, then moved away on all 4s before disappearing into the trees. That couple left the forest immediately, filing a formal complaint about disturbed individuals being allowed to camp in the backcountry.
Frank continued. "Smart kid. Capable. A lot like you, actually. Thought he had all the answers." He headed for the door. "The difference is Michael learned. You haven't." I found Michael outside by the equipment shed. He was checking inventory, making notes on a clipboard. When he saw me approaching, his posture changed. He looked defensive. "Don't," he said. "We've got to talk about it." "No, we really don't. Frank told me you were hospitalized. He told me you had some kind of breakdown." Michael's hand tightened on the clipboard. "He had no right to tell you that." "Then why didn't you tell me before I came out here? Why didn't you warn me?" "Warn you about what, Rhett? What exactly do you think I should have said?" He threw the clipboard down. "Should I have told my little brother, who was so excited about his first real job, that sometimes people die in the woods in ways that don't make sense? That sometimes you hear things that shouldn't exist? That the Forest Service has protocols for situations that can't be explained in any official capacity? Yes, actually, that's what you should have told me. You wouldn't have believed me. You would have thought I'd lost my mind." He picked up the clipboard. "You still think I've lost my mind, though. You think we're all caught up in superstition out here, freaked out about folklore. It's not that. I think something is happening that we don't understand, and instead of trying to investigate it, everyone's pretending it's not even happening." "You think this is a game?" Michael's voice rose. "Do you think we're not taking it seriously? We're taking it so seriously that we've implemented every single protocol we have to contain it. We've closed down half the forest. We're running armed patrols. We're monitoring every report. What exactly do you think we should be doing differently? How about stop dancing around what it is? I can't explain it to you. I can't make it make sense because it doesn't make sense." He was shouting now. "All I know is that in the winter of '79, 3 people died in these woods. And before they died, people wouldn't stop talking about it, wouldn't stop speculating, wouldn't stop using that name. And then it stopped, Rhett. It stopped when we stopped talking about it. That's correlation, Michael, not causation. I was there. I was 24 years old, and it was my 2nd year. I saw what they found. I heard the sounds, and I watched it end the moment we instituted the silence protocol." He stepped closer. "You want to know what I saw? You want to know why I spent 3 weeks in a hospital? Yes, I do." Jesus Christ. His voice cracked. "I saw a man I'd worked with for 2 years, someone I ate breakfast with every morning, reduced to parts scattered across a 1/4 mile of forest. I saw wounds that should not exist. I heard him scream over the radio while something killed him, and we were 40 minutes away and couldn't do anything to help." His eyes were wet. "I heard those screams for months afterward, every time I closed my eyes." I didn't know what to say. "So yes," Michael continued, quieter now, "I believe in certain legends, because I've seen what happens when you don't respect them. And I'll be damned if I'm going to watch my little brother make the same mistakes I did." He walked away. I stood there for a long time, trying to process what he told me. Part of me wanted to apologize. Part of me still thought there had to be a rational explanation, that everyone was too traumatized to see clearly. That second part won out. That's the part I regret now. The incident stopped for a few weeks. No new carcasses, no reports of unusual sounds or sightings. The forest seemed to settle back into its normal rhythm. Frank began cautiously discussing when we might lift some of the closures. "Maybe it's moved on," he said during a briefing, "migrated to a different territory." Harold, who had barely spoken in days, said quietly, "Or maybe it's close enough that it doesn't need to hunt so obviously anymore." "That's not helpful, Harold," Sarah said. "Neither is complacency." But as days passed without incident, the tension at the station eased. People began to joke again at dinner. Patrols felt less like combat operations and more like regular work. Even Michael seemed to relax a bit, though me and I weren't really talking all that much. I felt vindicated in a way. The panic had been overblown. Whatever had caused the deaths and the unusual predation pattern had moved on, just like Frank said. It had been a bear or a pack of wolves with atypical behavior, and now they'd migrated elsewhere. The silence protocol hadn't stopped a thing. The danger had simply run its natural course. Looking back now, I can't believe how stupid I was, how arrogant, how absolutely certain that my limited education and my 23 years of life gave me better judgment than people who'd spent decades in those woods. The call came in one day at 4:30 in the afternoon. A young couple, panicked voices over the radio. They'd hiked into the Hog Creek area despite the closure signs. The woman had fallen and injured her ankle. They needed help, but that wasn't why they sounded terrified. The man explained, his voice high and tight. "Something came into our camp. My girlfriend tried to run, and that's when she fell. It's getting dark. Please, you have to send someone." "Can you describe what you saw?" Frank asked. Please just send help." In the background, we could hear the woman crying. The man came in again. "It's still here. I can hear it crying." Frank looked at the duty board. Michael and I were the closest. Sarah was already committed to a medical evac near Knife Lake. Jean-Luc was at the far end of his patrol route. "It'll take us 90 minutes to reach them," Michael said, looking at the map. "That's cutting it close to sunset," Frank said. "I know." Harold appeared in the doorway. "Take the Remington, not your service pistol." Michael nodded and went to the gun safe. I grabbed my pack and followed him out. The hike to Hog Creek took us through dense forest along a trail that had seen minimal maintenance. The couple had gone in despite closure signs, which meant they'd either ignored multiple warnings or hadn't seen them in their eagerness to find a secluded spot. Michael set a brutal pace. He had the Remington, a .308 Winchester, much heavier firepower than our standard sidearms, slung across his back. I was carrying the medical kit and emergency supplies. We'd been hiking for maybe 30 minutes when I smelled it. Rot, but far from that normal decay smell you get in the forest. It was like meat mixed with spoiled coffee, and for good measure, a spoiled kiwi. It was so uniquely disgusting that my stomach turned. Michael stopped, unslung the rifle, and checked the chamber. "Stay close," he said. "What is that smell?" "Keep moving." Another 20 minutes in, we heard it. Faint at first, distant crying like that night on the island. A man weeping, mournful and sustained. It seemed to come from west of the trail, maybe 200 yards out. I looked at Michael. His face went tight. "Don't look toward it. Don't call out. Don't shine your light in that direction. Just keep walking." "Shouldn't we?" "No, we keep walking." And that's what we did. The crying continued, following us, not getting closer, but not fading away. It maintained the same distance, pacing us through the forest.
The light was failing fast. We'd left at 4:45, and it was past 6 now. Sunset at this time of year comes early in northern Minnesota. The shadows between the trees were already deep. I couldn't help myself. I glanced to the left, toward where the crying was coming from. Through the trees, maybe 100 yards out, I saw a pale figure hunched over in a way that looked painful. The proportions seemed off, but the light was bad, and the distance made details beyond that impossible. It was rocking back and forth. The crying sound was coming from it. Michael grabbed my shoulder hard enough to hurt. "Move, now." We moved faster, but the crying followed. The couple's camp was a disaster when we reached it just after 6:30. Their tent had been slashed, not torn. Food was scattered everywhere. The sleeping bag had been dragged about 20 feet and shredded.
The man was in his early 20s, sitting with his back against a tree, holding a hatchet. His girlfriend was on the ground next to him, her right ankle visibly swollen. Both of them looked like they'd been crying. "Thank God," the man said. His name was Brendan. "Thank God you're here." Michael went straight to the girlfriend. "Casey, I'm Ranger Mitchell. Let me look at that ankle." While he examined her, I did a quick perimeter check. The camp was maybe 30 yards from Hog Creek itself, set in a small clearing. There was good visibility, which the couple had probably chosen for exactly that reason. They could see anything approaching, except they hadn't seen what destroyed their camp. "When did this happen?" I asked Brendan. "Around 4. We were at the creek washing up. When we came back, the tent was like this. We heard something in the trees, something moving around. Casey panicked and ran. That's when she fell." "Did you see what it was?" "No, but we heard it. Breathing, heavy breathing, right outside the tent fabric before we came back. And then, after Casey fell, we heard the crying."
Michael finished his examination. "Ankles broken. We need to get her out of here tonight." "Can she walk?" I asked. "With support, slowly, but we need to move now. Full dark in 30 minutes." We packed quickly, just the essentials. Everything else got left behind. Michael fashioned a basic splint for Casey's ankle using gear from our kit and some tent poles from their destroyed tent. The crying had stopped while we were working. The silence afterward was somehow worse. "I'll take point," Michael said. "You help Casey. Brendan, you're in the middle. Stay close, stay quiet. If I tell you to run, you run, and you don't look back. Understood?" We all nodded. The first 20 minutes went smoothly. Casey was tough. She bit down on the pain and kept moving with me supporting her weight. Brendan carried the packs, and Michael led with the rifle ready, using his flashlight to mark the trail. Then we heard it again, not behind us, but ahead of us on the trail. Crying, that mournful cry. Michael stopped. We all stopped. The sound came closer, still ahead, but moving towards us. "Off the trail," Michael whispered, "into the trees, slowly." We moved into the forest on the right side of the trail. Dense underbrush made it harder, especially with Casey's injury, but we managed 20 feet before Michael signaled to stop. Through the trees, we could see the trail in the light from Michael's dropped flashlight. Something moved into the beam. I saw it clearly for the first time. It was shaped like a man, naked, the skin gray-white, pulled tightly over bones that showed clearly. It was emaciated to a degree that didn't seem survivable. The rib cage was visible. The joints looked horrible, but somehow it moved, standing upright, but with that pained-looking posture. The spine was curved forward, the legs bent slightly backward at the ankle, like it could drop to all fours in an instant. And it was crying. Tears ran down its face. The mouth hung open slack, but the crying sound didn't come from the mouth. It came from deeper, from its chest, resonating. Casey made a small sound. The thing's head snapped towards us. That face, I can still see it.
sunken eyes that reflected the flashlight beam like some wild animal's, lips pulled back from teeth that looked too large, an expression of anguish and hunger mixed violently together. It took a step towards us. Michael stepped out onto the trail, raising the rifle. "Back off!" The thing took another step. Michael fired into the air, the shot echoing through the forest. The thing didn't flinch. It made a different sound now. Under the crying, a whining noise. It was hungry.
Michael fired again, this time at the ground in front of it. Dirt and rocks sprayed up. The thing moved. It dropped to all fours and came at us so fast, not running but something else, a scrambling, loping movement that covered ground impossibly quick. Michael fired center mass. I saw the impact, saw it statter, but it didn't go down. Then it vanished into the dark, only to reappear from a different angle, coming from the trees on our left. How could it move that fast? It was so difficult to track. One moment in front of us, the next circling us through the trees. "It's flanking us!" Michael shouted. "Rhett, when I say go, you run! Get them to the canoes!" "I'm not! That's an order!" The thing lunged again from a new position. Michael spun and fired, hitting it in the shoulder. It staggered, but used that impossible speed to circle back. It hit Michael from the side, having covered the distance in seconds. They both went down. The rifle flew from Michael's hands, landing 10 feet away. The thing was on top of him, moving fast, jittering almost. It had his left arm in its mouth. Michael screamed. I dropped Casey's arm and ran forward, grabbing the rifle. I couldn't shoot. The two of them were tangled up together. I might hit Michael. Blood was spraying black in the flashlight. The thing was tearing at his arm, shaking its head like a dog with a toy. I swung the rifle like a club, connecting with the thing's head. A solid hit. The stock cracked. It let go of Michael and turned to me. We were face to face, less than 2 feet apart. The eyes were terrible, nothing human in them, just hunger, bottomless hunger and rage and something else I don't have words for. The smell that came off it made me gag. And then it lunged. Michael, his left arm hanging all wrong, grabbed it from behind with his right hand, got hold of its neck and pulled it backward. The thing twisted, inhumanly flexible, and began to claw at him. The creature kept writhing, that unnatural speed and flexibility, letting it twist in ways that shouldn't be possible. Michael was still screaming, but not from pain now, from effort. He had the thing in some kind of hold, using his body weight to keep it down, but it kept nearly breaking free. "Run!" His voice didn't sound right, raw and desperate. "Get them out! Run!" Brendan was already pulling Casey away. She was sobbing, but I stood there, frozen. Michael and the thing were rolling on the ground. The creature's movements were so fast and erratic, like fighting smoke, breaking free, twisting back, lunging again in one fluid nightmare of motion. "Rhett, go!" I ran. I grabbed Brendan, half-carried Casey with him, and we crashed through the forest back toward the trail. Behind us, Michael screamed again, different than before, and the sound cut off.
We ran. I don't remember the details of the hike out. My brain was in pure panic. We hit the trail and followed it by flashlight. Casey wasn't crying anymore. She'd gone quiet, in shock probably.
Brendan kept asking what was happening, and I couldn't answer because I didn't have an answer. We made it to the canoe launch after midnight. I got them into a canoe and paddled out until I felt safe, then grabbed the radio. "Station, this is Mitchell. Officer down. Single attacker. Need immediate support. Medical evac. Send everyone." My voice sounded strange, flat, like someone else was using my mouth. "Rhett," it was Frank. "What's your location?" I gave him the coordinates. "Who's down?" Michael, we were attacked. He told me to get the civilians out. He's still out there." "What attacked you?" I couldn't say it, couldn't make the words come out. "I don't know. It looked like a person, but it wasn't. Please, send help." Response team deploying. Stay at the launch point. Do not go back in. Do you understand me? "Yes." "Rhett, do not go back in." I didn't go back in. I sat at the launch with Brendan and Casey until the first response vehicle arrived 40 minutes later. Then more vehicles, ambulance for Casey, sheriff's deputies. Sarah showed up with Jean-Luc. Frank arrived in his personal truck, still in civilian clothes. They organized a search team, 8 people heavily armed with portable lights. I tried to go with them, but Frank wouldn't allow it. "You're in shock. You stay here." They found Michael 3 hours later. He was half a mile from where we'd been attacked. He'd crawled part of the way, walked part of the way too. His left arm was hanging by tissue and skin, everything else torn away, muscle, tendons, most of the bone. He'd lost enough blood that he should have been dead, but he was conscious when they found him. Conscious, hypothermic, going into shock, but alive. The medical helicopter took him to Duluth. I wasn't allowed to go with them. Frank drove me to the hospital instead, a 3-hour drive, and for the most part, we didn't speak. Michael was in surgery for 7 hours. They tried to save the arm, but couldn't. Too much damage. They amputated below the elbow. I wasn't allowed to see him for the first week, family only, and they didn't seem to want to count me once our parents arrived from Wisconsin. My mother looked at me like I'd done it myself. Maybe I had. When I finally got into his room, Michael was awake. The stump of his left arm was bandaged. He looked gray. "Hey," I said. He turned his head to look at me, didn't say anything. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." "You should have listened," he said. His voice was rough. "You should have listened."
That was all he said. A nurse came in and told me visiting hours were over, and I left. The official report called it an animal attack, species undetermined. Michael's statement to the sheriff was brief. Dark conditions, attacked by something he couldn't identify. He'd fought it off long enough for me to get the civilians to safety. The medical examiner noted that the wounds were inconsistent with known predator patterns, but couldn't offer an alternative explanation. Brendan and Casey gave their statement about seeing an emaciated man. That statement was noted, but not emphasized. The official conclusion suggested they'd misidentified a bear in poor lighting and traumatic conditions. No search was conducted for the attacker. The area was designated for expanded closure pending further wildlife assessment. Harold retired that month, a month earlier than he'd planned. Didn't even finish out his notice period, just packed his things and left. Jean-Luc requested a transfer in November and got sent to Wisconsin. I heard later he quit the Forest Service entirely within a year. Frank stayed on as chief, but he looked 10 years older in a matter of months. I tried to keep working. I went back on patrol rotation early the next month, made it 3 days before I found a deer carcass with the same tearing pattern we'd seen before. I had a complete breakdown, couldn't breathe, couldn't move. Sarah had to talk me down over the radio before I could hike back out. I requested leave on November 18th. I made it permanent on December 3rd. Frank accepted my resignation without comment. Before I left, I had one final conversation with him in his office. "It's not your fault," he said. "He lost his arm because of me. He lost his arm because something in these woods is wrong. It has been wrong longer than either of us has been alive." He leaned back in his chair. "But you broke the protocol. You spoke its name. You invited attention. So that silence thing, it's not superstition? The silence is survival." He opened his desk drawer and pulled out a folder, old yellowed pages. Winter of 1979, we lost 3 people in 6 weeks. Before that, in 1962, we lost 2, and 1947, 4 died. Every incident was preceded by the same thing, people talking about it, speculating, using the name. And every incident stopped when we stopped talking. That doesn't make sense. No, it doesn't, but it's documented and it's consistent and it's the only thing that's ever worked. He closed the folder. Some things don't have explanations, Rhett. They just have patterns. And the smart thing is to respect the patterns, even when you don't understand them. I went back to Wisconsin, my parents' house, a grown man sleeping in his childhood bedroom, jumping at every sound outside. I fell apart over the next few years, moved to Duluth, then Minneapolis. I couldn't hold a job for more than a few months. My relationships failed. I drank too much. I was angry all the time, at myself mostly, but it spilled over onto everyone around me. Michael and I didn't speak from 1988 to 1995. I'd call on holidays and he'd be polite and distant. He got married, had kids, built a life, and I wasn't part of it. Finally, I sobered up in 1999. I started to put things back together. I reached out to Michael again, really reached out this time. He was accepting. We rebuilt something. Not what we had before, but something. He tells people he lost his arm in an industrial accident. His kids don't know the truth. His wife might, but I've never asked. We never talk about that night. We never talk about Superior National Forest. We never talk about what happened. Until now. A few years ago, I saw Harold's death in the newspaper, in the obituaries. He died at 88, survived by 3 children and 7 grandchildren. I wanted to attend the funeral, but I thought it wouldn't be right. He wouldn't have wanted me there. But his passing got me thinking about that time, about what happened, about all the people who know what's in those woods and keep quiet about it. Then last month, Michael's daughter called me. She's 20, studying environmental science at the University of Minnesota. She wants to be a park ranger. Dad won't talk about his time in the Forest Service, but you were there. Can you tell me what it's really like? She asked. I gave her the same lie I've given everyone for 36 years, that it was hard work and I decided it wasn't for me. After I hung up, I realized I needed to tell the truth. Not to my niece, she doesn't need this weight, but to someone, to anyone who might listen. I don't expect you to believe in the Wendigo. I barely believe it myself, and I saw it. But I believe in this. Some legends are warnings.
When people who live close to the wild tell you not to speak of something, there's a reason. When folklore says a name gives power, there is wisdom there, even if you can't see the mechanism. I was young, arrogant, rational, I thought, believed I knew better than people who'd spent decades learning the patterns of that place. And my brother ended up paying the price because I had to push and pry. I broke the silence. I own that. I've spent decades owning it. I'm going to visit Michael next week. I've printed this out. I'm going to show it to him first before I share it with anyone else. I don't know if he'll approve of me telling this story. He might ask me not to. If he does, I'll respect that. I owe him that much and more. But I hope he'll understand why I needed to write it down, why I need to get it off my chest. Not for forgiveness, I don't think I deserve that, but maybe so that someone else will learn what I learned, that the old ways exist for good reasons. Sometimes silence is the only shield we have.